War has been a persistent aspect of human history, often arising from conflicts and disagreements between nations. While many may argue or view war as a means to resolve disputes and address issues, a deeper analysis of various conflicts revealed that wars rarely offer lasting solutions. In the expansive land of West Africa, about 433 years ago, a pivotal battle took place that will define the fate of two mighty empires. The Songhai Empire and the Moroccan dynasty clashed in a place called Tondibi, present-day Mali. Now, this is the story of the Battle of Tondibi.
The formidable Songhai Empire dominated a vast area of West Africa throughout the 14th century, right up to the 16th century. During the early 16th century, with their capital at Gao, present-day Mali, the Songhai Empire had a well-structured and effective military strategy that included a well-organized army, superior cavalry, effective use of infantry and artillery, naval power, intelligence gathering, and strong fortifications. These factors combined made the Songhai Empire the dominant force in Western Africa for more than a century, controlling the Western Sudan from the headwaters of the Senegal River. However, after the death of Askia Daoud in 1583, a succession fight broke out within the region, which left the empire in a weakened state. After months of internal strife and a civil war, Askia Ishaq II was made the new ruler of the Songhai Empire. At this point, the might of the empire was in decline. To the north, the Saadi dynasty of Morocco was at the height of its power. In 1578, Morocco had successfully repelled an attempt by Portugal to conquer it at the Battle of Alcácer Quibir, where its forces decimated a large Portuguese army. Moroccan Sultan Moli Ahmad al-Mansur, the fifth ruler of the Saadian dynasty, was a man of considerable ambition. He sought nothing less than to become the Caliph of all of Western Africa. He even dreamed of building a blue water navy and joining the colonial venture in the New World. His principal impediment to these ends was money. The battle against the Portuguese in 1578 had cost Morocco a great deal both in financial and human resources. The kingdom was on the verge of bankruptcy. Ahmad al-Mansur tried to remedy his money problems by asserting his control over key desert oases and salt mines, and he was confident that his army's superiority in gunpowder weapons would ensure his success. Between 1582 and 1586, al-Mansur's armies conducted a number of incursions into the Sahara, to the salt mines of Taghaza, into the Senegal River Valley. When these efforts failed to provide sufficient revenues, the Moroccan Sultan Caliph was determined to extend his control over the gold mines of West Africa. In search of new resources for his kingdom, Sultan Ahmad al-Mansur Saadi turned his attention to the Songhai Empire, where he erroneously believed had gold mines from which its wealth came from. In 1589, as the Songhai Empire grapples with internal discord, Ahmad al-Mansur decided the time was right to move against the Songhai. Before he could proceed, the Sultan felt the need for the backing of the senior religious and military leaders of the land. At a meeting at the royal palace in Marrakesh, a few men pointed to the difficulties of desert crossing and conducting military operations so far from home. They argued about the cost of maintaining an occupation force in this distant land, and several leaders objected to the notion of one Muslim state making an unprovoked attack against another. The Sultan himself argued that the conquest would enrich his realm, both with the natural wealth of the land, namely gold, and also through vast new converts to Islam. It would make Morocco a great power among the Mediterranean states. The invasion must happen. It was a unanimous decision. Accounts of the composition of the expedition vary, but may be estimated at approximately 6,000 soldiers and support personnel. These were subdivided into an infantry contingent of 2,000 soldiers and all armed with the muskets. The cavalry consisted of a corps of 2,000 mounted on horses and also equipped with the musket. The support personnel included engineers, camel drivers, cannoneers, medical staff, cooks, guides, and so forth. The Sultan counted on Morocco's advantage in gunpowder weapons, virtually unknown south of the Sahara, to be the decisive advantage. While the Sultan had many more experienced commanders, men alongside whom he had fought past battles, he chose an untested palace eunuch, Judar, to be his commander for this expedition. Judar Pasha was described as a short, blue-eyed Andalusian who was born around 1562 in Cuevas, Granada. Captured as a boy by a raiding party of corsairs, Judar was castrated and raised as an eunuch in the royal palace of Marrakech. Judar had apparently earned his way out of palace drudgeries through leading several tax enforcement missions in the countryside. Evidently, he got results, displaying enough energy, organizational skill, and ruthlessness to win his master's confidence. The Moroccan army departed Marrakech amid great fanfare on October 16, 1590, and they subsequently traveled down one of the busiest caravan networks. Unaware of the scientific advancements of the gunpowder age, and confident that the desert would protect them from the Arabs, the Songhai were complacent. They made little effort to gather intelligence about the Moroccan intentions, strengths, and weaknesses. This was a huge mistake on the part of the Songhai Empire. The arrival of the Moroccan forces in Songhai lands in late February 1591 came as a complete surprise in Gao. By the time Askia Ishaq's order to block the desert wells was sent out, the Moroccans were already on the river at Kabara, south of Timbuktu. Moreover, the Songhai had no understanding of their foe. Had they any clue, the Songhai leaders might have considered just how ill-suited their forces were to stand toe-to-toe with the Moroccans on open ground. The Songhai weapons and tactics had not changed in hundreds of years. Their soldiers were equipped with lances, arrows, spears, and cudgels. Battles were always the same: a missile exchange, followed by a charge, and ending in a melee. These methods had been good enough in the past against their neighbors, so there was no impetus to change. Warfare was already changing at this time. In a few weeks, Askia Ishaq was able to assemble from across the empire a substantial force. Ishaq's army was 28,000 strong, which included 10,000 infantry and 18,000 cavalry. And the Askia had brought with him every shaggy fetish, shaman, magician, sorcerer, and witch doctor in Gao. He was taking no chances. To level the playing field with the technologically superior Moroccans, the Songhai king had what he thought was a secret weapon. His men had assembled 1,000 herd of cattle, with the belief that driving a herd before the army might shield the warriors from gunfire and perhaps break up the Moroccan formation. As the sky began to lighten over Tondibi, Judar and his commanders had decided upon a simple and compact formation. Behind the infantry was the mass of cavalry. The musketeers were toward the front ranks, where they could bring their weapons to bear, with the lance-toting Arabs in reserve. Judah and his bodyguards would take up position somewhere near the center. For the Moroccans, firearms would decide the day. The muskets gave the Moroccans a great advantage over the Songhai, but not necessarily a decisive one. About mid-morning, the Moroccans began to move south. The morning haze was almost gone now, and the sun no longer blinded them, but the visibility was still poor. They continued to follow the river. In a short time, they began to make out the sound of drums. Then, gradually, the armies of the great Songhai Empire emerged on the plain. Judah and his men had expected a horde, but the sight of so many Songhai soldiers was unnerving nevertheless. Yes, the Moroccans had firearms, cannon, and experience, and so they were the superior force. But still, the Songhai vastly outnumbered them by at least 20 to 1. The Songhai battlefield throbbed with vitality. Silhouettes of warriors stretched across the horizon like a living, breathing wall, adorned with swaying spears and swirling mystical fetishes, all while the booming rhythm of colossal drums and the piercing call of long horns filled the air. In front of the Songhai army was a mass of cattle that had been assembled to act as some kind of shield from gunfires. Ishak sat atop his horse among his 30 palace guards, eunuchs all, and surveyed his army one last time. He was anxious to give the command to start the battle. The beasts wagged their heads, eyes wide and white, clearly agitated. They were as anxious as the army to get battle underway. The Moroccans were almost within Songhai arrowshot. Ishak signaled for the advance to begin. The tenders unleashed their long sticks on the cattle, shouting and waving and creating a surging forward. The herd charged towards the Moroccan army. The idea was to break the Moroccan lines by driving cattle into their center. The tactics failed. Judah gave the order. The Moroccans leveled their guns and cannons and fired into the approaching herd, stampeding it back into the Songhai lines, dropping dozens of head and causing the rest of the herd to stampede off to the flanks. Their cattle shield stripped away, the vanguard was now exposed to the fury of gunfire. The Moroccans volley fired, each rank discharging their weapons in turn, then dropping low as the succeeding rank rose to fire. The field guns and mortars had been deployed on a rise. They began to drop shells onto the throbbing host. Songhai soldiers watched in horror, the grisly theater of war in the Gunpowder Age. Bodies ripped apart, heads exploding, limbs blown off, the sheer volume of blood. The Songhai vanguard regrouped, apparently deciding to set the example. With the vanguard standing their ground and exchanging blows with the enemy, the rest of the Songhai army began to surge forward from the flanks. The Moroccan cavalry flared out to intercept them, and the battle began to spread laterally toward the river and into the desert. The Songhai numerical superiority began to assert itself. The Moroccan infantry was unable to reload fast enough to keep the enemy at bay, and soon hand-to-hand fighting engulfed the battle line. The suspense was short-lived. The Songhai did not press home the attack. It lost steam. Now was the moment. A dose of leadership was required to stiffen the Songhai resolve. But in the eyes of the battle commanders, the battle was already lost. Eventually, the bulk of the Songhai army lost heart and began to retreat hastily. The Moroccan musketeers began to fire at them as they fled. It was a shooting gallery. In a matter of minutes, the dead lay all about. Judah signaled the Moroccan formation to advance. Firearms became clubs, and swords appeared to finish off what remained of the vanguard. Many of the Songhai tried to appeal for mercy. "We are Muslims," they pleaded. "We are your brothers." It did them no good. They met their death at the tip of the Moroccan swords. It was carnage. His best troops slaughtered, and his trump cards played to no effect. After a few hours, Ishaq had seen enough. The king turned and sped off to Gao in the company of his eunuchs, leaving what was left of the army to fend for itself. Shortly after Ishaq fled, the battle sputtered to an end. The remaining Songhai troops retreated, and the Moroccans let them go. The dead and dying lay across the sandy plain in a strangely quantifiable display. Riding hard, Ishaq reached the capital that night and proceeded to the palace. The city had no defenses, no plan for such a contingency, and no time to make one. The Moroccans were few hours away from the city. The entire city were thrown into total panic. Such a thing had never occurred in the Songhai capital. Most people had no horses or camels, so the river was their best means of escape. Judah was in no hurry. He would take several days before resuming his advance upon Gao. Malnourished from weeks of hard marching, a tide of sickness had washed over the army, sapping the strength from their bodies. The Moroccans finally march into the Songhai capital toward the end of April 1591. The city was mostly abandoned, except for a handful of individuals whom Judah decided were harmless enough, scholars and merchants who were too old to run away. According to them, the Askia and his court had fled across the river on a boat days earlier. Gao appeared vastly different from what the Moroccans had anticipated. The once magnificent capital of the Songhai Empire now stood with its mud brick walls and dirt floors, no gold mine, leaving the Moroccans deeply disillusioned. Judah concluded, Gao, the great capital city of an empire, a land filled with gold, was a myth. Their expectations were scuttled. The Moroccan soldiers' search in Gao resembled a desperate scavenger hunt, but their findings were meager, consisting only of food and everyday items, no gleaming gold in sight. The only hint of gold came from the inexpensive trinkets looted from fallen Songhai warriors at Tondibi. This tragic sack of Gao not only claimed numerous lives, but also marked the tragic decline of the once mighty Songhai Empire, leaving a somber legacy of lost grandeur.
Hope you enjoyed this short documentary. I invite you to join me next time as we explore another significant African battle. Please do not forget to like, subscribe, and share this channel. I hope to see you some other time.
All images were generated with AI tools.